is right now.
Yeah. No, I'm a nervous type person also. So let's just go. Let's do it. I didn't think anybody would ever get around to finding out what really happened, that there was really such evil in one family. I loved my brother. I really loved him. But we didn't see what we should have saw. When you look at somebody, look them in the eyes. If you look in somebody's eyes and it look like they got a demon there, they got one.
Why were you concerned to do this?
My sister wanted to do it, and she, I don't know, she said it was time, and I just said, okay, y'all. Well, if you're gonna tell your side, I want to tell mine too, so. Her pain was so deep that she buried it for many, many years. I hope that by telling this story, that it has helped her to get some of her pain out. Somebody we ought to have seen the red flag, you know. We should have seen that something wasn't quite right here. You know, we knew it wasn't quite right, but we didn't deal with it the way we should have. We loved him. He was not always the evil person that they saw. He was a good person most of the time. But you could always tell that there was something wrong. That's the little boy and Johnny. That's the little boy I miss. This is also him with the cowlick. Never could tame that cowlick. Yeah, he was a happy little boy then. He was always laughing. Except when Daddy was home. Dad was evil, very evil.
You've been drinking again, haven't you?
Don't worry about
I can tell you've been drinking again.
One day he came home and he knew Mama had some money, which she had for the winter. And he come home drunk and she wouldn't give him the money.
It's my money.
Damn it.
I decide what goes on in this house with the money. It's my money.
I gotta take care of them.
They're my kids too.
And he pulled a shotgun on her and he told her he's gonna blow her brains out.
Put that look on the kitchen.
You said you want to see Matt. You want to see Matt?
I'm sorry. I'll give you whatever you want.
You're going to give me the money.
And I grabbed Johnny because I was afraid that he was gonna shoot Mama in the head.
Put the gun down.
But I didn't know what was gonna happen. I will never forget that, and I never forgave my daddy for that. I did not want my brother to grow up like my father.
Just give me what I want.
My sister Diane and Johnny had been building something, and he laid the hammer down. Diane had been picking on Johnny all day long, but he had had enough. And he got mad. That boy, when you made him mad, he was mad. He took the hammer and bang, tapped her in the head with it. Diane went down. That was my first memory of anything. He could have killed her.
Hey, can I have a piece of candy?
Here's some candy. I wanted one.
Please?
And I asked him, he said, no, I couldn't have it. No, he said, you're not getting any. I just kept bugging him about it. And he finally gave it to me. Well, by the time I went and put it in my mouth, he hit me on the leg real hard. And I went, and got choked. And I couldn't breathe. It had no effect on him, not that I could see. He just smiled and laughed at us. It scared me. Later, I asked him, what made you do that? He said, I've had demons since I was a little boy, 4 years old. He had demons in his mind, he said.
Why would you do that?
It did no good to spank him, because he got to where he enjoyed being spanked. I've never seen anybody like to get whipped, but he did. Johnny did not feel pain, and he would tell you, I do not feel pain. And Johnny thought that everybody felt that way. And that, to me, that's just not normal. And then, you know, it just escalated. Johnny was raised to be evil by a father that wanted him to be evil. He was made to do things and see things that no young child should ever be made to see.
Hey.
Then he went to all the local whores, and one of them was like 64 years old. And he took Johnny with him. Johnny's 14 years old. And he made Johnny have sex with that woman. Forced him to have sex with that woman. He told him he was trying to make him into a man. Daddy told him if he didn't, he was gonna beat him. And he did. Crying the whole time. When Johnny told me that story, I cried like a baby. Johnny had never been with a girl. Didn't even know what sex was. Johnny he was different after that. He was totally different. Johnny went up there as a young kid, came back as a very angry man. Yeah, it is hard for me to look at this picture. I've not seen this picture in a long time. He's not happy here. It's when he started really having troubles. He talked about seeing dead people.
No!
He would get up. I dreamed I seen somebody dead, and he was talking about people that were still alive. It was weird. Johnny thought that he was psychic at one time, and he thought he was seeing people that were going to die.
People in my dreams, they're all gonna die.
Mama told him, Johnny, you're not psychic. Nobody's going to die. But Mama thought it was a little demon. She said, look at that. He looks like he got a demon in his eyes. And it's hard to get rid of the demon. In my heart, I knew that something was fixing to be terribly wrong and that something was fixing to happen, but I didn't know what.
Why couldn't I protect him from the person he became? I didn't know how bad it was until right before it was all said and done. I couldn't protect him. And that makes me sad.
What? Are you sure?
Mama was on the phone with my sister Wanda. This year had called and didn't know what to do.
Well, how did they know it was even him?
This year had caught Johnny peeping in women's windows.
I will talk to him. I'll talk to him right now. And never do anything like that again.
I asked him. I said, what is this, you know?
Johnny, is it true?
Are you looking in girls' windows? He said, oh, they lied. That ain't true.
It wasn't me.
Got nothing to say about that. He said, I ain't done nothing wrong. And that was it.
Johnny, don't lie to me.
I'm not lying.
In my mind, I knew that was true. And he was lying to me. He just bald-faced lied to me. But he didn't want to talk about it.
We was living in Texas. The police came by. They told Mama that they had caught Johnny peeping in the window, and he was peeping in at his little girlfriend's house. The funny thing was, it wasn't his girlfriend. He just called her that. He didn't even know the girl. He was just watching her, and had been for several weeks. He said, it's fun. That's all he ever said. It's fun. He liked doing it for the thrill of it. That wasn't the first time. That's just the time he got caught.
And it was just, it wasn't talked about in my house, what he had done. And they kept it hush-hush. It should have been dealt with differently. But he's just saying, I don't know if that would have changed anything or not.
He wanted to get in these girls' heads. He wanted to do things to them, but he didn't know quite how to do it. But he was trying to learn, and he couldn't stop. As the years was going by, it started really getting bad. He was going inside people's houses. He went in their room and stood over their bed for 45 minutes while they slept and just watched them. Just stood there and watched them sleep. What pleasure does that give you? Why would you want to stand over somebody's bed and look at them? But to him, it was a thrill. It's like he wanted to play games with other people's lives. I think Johnny knew that he was fixing to do something that was really bad.
We was all at Betty's when the police came.
There was a bang at the door, and I jumped up, and I answered the door, and there's cops, and they were looking for Johnny.
Eddie, is your brother Johnny home?
And I want to know why. And they wouldn't tell me.
Just get your brother for us.
Turned around, went to the bedroom and got Johnny. And they immediately arrested him. And took him. You know, I was in a panic. It was pure panic. This girl was the daughter of the mayor. He had broken her house, and she caught him standing over her bed. She woke up, and he attempted to rape her. And it didn't work. She started screaming and hollering and fighting, and he run.
I could never bring myself to ask him. I don't know why, I just couldn't. Maybe I was afraid that he'd tell me the truth. I don't know. But I just didn't ask that question.
You got something to say? Something you want to ask?
In my mind, I knew he'd done it, but I didn't want to hear it come out of his mouth. I didn't want to hear him say that he's capable of something like that.
If you could do me a favor and, make sure Mama doesn't come down here.
Mama put the blinders on, as you'd say, put the blinders on. Didn't believe it. She denied it for years. When he come home that year, he wasn't my brother. I mean, I could see in his eyes. I was wondering where my brother went. Where did he go, you know?
And it was that look, that evil look, the one that he get when he was really, really mad. It was like evil. We were in a bar, and I was sitting at a table with one of my girlfriends, and this guy had said something to Johnny. Johnny got very mad, and this guy had turned his back, and Johnny pulled out a knife and put it to that guy's throat. I thought he was going to kill him. We were in a bar, and this guy had said something to Johnny.
No, watch where you're going.
And Johnny pulled out a knife and put it to that guy's throat. I thought he was going to kill him. Right there.
Watch it. Say it again. Say it again.
All of a sudden, it was like the devil himself was in that boy. It would be like his eyes turned red, and he was crazy. He was somewhere else. He was not there. But it was a demon in his soul. If there ever was a demon in somebody, it was in his soul at that moment.
Johnny, stop it! Johnny, look at me! Don't do something dumb.
I got up and went to Johnny, and if I hadn't, he would have probably killed that man.
Put the knife down. Come on.
Johnny told me that he'd choked his girlfriend. He said he choked her. Said he had his hands around her neck. Would kill her. For no reason. Except that she was there. And he said he just let go. He convinced her that she had a nightmare or something, and she choked herself in her sleep. What would make him go into that kind of a rage is what's going through my head. What pushed him that far? He wouldn't talk about it. And he said, it's none of your business. Leave it alone. And that's what I left it alone. And she was lucky to live. She was lucky to come back. She was one of the lucky ones.
He couldn't control himself. It was like he would lose control of his actions. He didn't know how to stop.
I let him come and live with me. And I got him a job, and even the people we worked with liked him. He was real respectful. Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am.
He knew how to put the charm on. And if Johnny wanted you to like him, he could make you like him. Everything looked like it was going to be okay. And then it wasn't.
We got up to go to work one morning, just a regular morning. Somebody said, did you see that flyer out there on the window? Your neighbor's missing. I said, what? He said, yeah, Patricia Stewart. I said, well, no, I haven't heard nothing about it. I hope she knows she's okay. And I went on to work. Didn't think nothing about it.
Morning.
Hey.
We got up to go to work. And I said, what happened to your pants, Johnny?
What's that on your pants?
I noticed a little spot on one side of the knee. He said, oh, I was working on my old car and got some transmission fluid on. Kind of made me a little weird, you know, what happened there? What's going on? I knew something deep down in my heart that something wasn't right. I can't honestly say that it didn't go through my mind. I'd be lying, I'm not gonna lie. I thought, oh God, Johnny, what have you done? And I asked him, Johnny, what's going on? Oh, nothing. Nothing's going on. Everything's good. I said, everything's not good. My neighbor's missing. He won't say nothing. Won't say nothing. Hope she's all right. Looked at me and they said, well, you might as well admit it. We know you killed her. Your brother told us that you done it.
What's that on your pants?
I was working on the car.
I'm getting scared. I'm kind of getting scared here, you know? I've seen the pants, the girl's gone, nobody can find her. I thought, oh God, Johnny, what have you done?
What do you think he might have been doing?
I think he had killed her. A few days go by, and God bless her family because they reported her missing, obviously, and put the flyers out, missing, and they're the ones that got the SBI involved. We opened the door, and the SBI agent and a local county cop was there and asked us to come over to the police station to answer a few questions about the disappearance of Patricia.
Can you describe your relationship with your neighbor?
She's my neighbor.
They asked me, did I hear anything? Did I see anything unusual? And I said, no. They said, well, maybe you heard something and just don't realize it. And I said, no, sir, I don't think I heard anything.
You must know something, Layla. You must have seen something.
I don't know.
They looked at me and they said, well, you might as well admit it. We know you killed her. Your brother told us that you done it.
You're looking at going away for a long time.
No.
I said, what did you just say to me? He said, we know you killed her. Why don't you just tell us what dumpster you threw it in? And they say there was other things in there, like zip ties and stuff that was in the trunk. And that's when I actually knew. That's when it really hit home that my brother had killed her and put her in the trunk of my car. There was evidence, it was there. It was her blood. They had done tested it. It was her.
Johnny, you have to tell him that I'm not involved. Do you hear me? Please.
I said, Johnny, please. I said, they're threatening me with life in prison. Please tell him. He said, I ain't got nothing to say. He said, I have nothing to say to you. I have nothing to say to them. And he won't tell. Mama, you can't lie to Mama. If we get Mama here, he'll tell her the truth. Because he can never lie to her.
Johnny's the #1 suspect in a murder case we're investigating right now.
Those two detectives showed up at Mama's door looking for Mama. They said, we are investigating the murder of Patricia Stewart in Robbinsville, North Carolina.
Yes, we're investigating right now.
And I knew right then Johnny had done killed somebody. And Mama was white as a sheet. She knew too. He said, I want you to come to Robbinsville with me to talk to your son. He will not tell us where Patricia's body is. Mama told them, she said, if my son has killed somebody, I will find it.
Mama goes in. Big tears just come to his eyes. She said,
Hi, baby.
she said, son, what's going on, He just crying, he just went crying around when he seen her. And he said, Mama, it's awful. It's bad, Mama. It's really bad. She says, oh, you can just tell me, just tell me. Now for a long time he wouldn't say nothing. He said, you just sit there and say, Mom, it's bad. Whatever it is, it's all right. You know, there's nothing you could do that would make me stop loving you. And she finally told me, son, you can't live with this. You've got to tell me. We can get through this, you just tell me. I love you, son. No matter what, you're my son, and I love you. And he told her.
Thank you so much again for coming over. No, yeah, it was so much fun.
He was in that apartment when she come home. Because she had a friend with her. But he was in the closet, watching them. And he said if that girl hadn't left, she would have died too. He said that he come out of the closet on her. He hit her in the head with a knife, he said. It wasn't enough to kill her, but she was unconscious. He hit her with such force it cracked her skull. He strangled her after that when he seen that she was still alive. Choked her until she didn't move anymore. He said he panicked, but I don't believe he did. They meant to kill her. Put her in the trunk of my car. And took her to grandma's. He set her on fire. He seen headlights. Dumped some dirt on her, put her out and left. But what he put her through, she had to be so terrified. And so scared that night. For somebody to be in your house, and that's my brother. You know, that's my brother. Yeah, it does. It does. It was bad. I don't wish it on anybody. It's the worst nightmare I've never wake up from. I think there was a lot more.
Johnny would just go out there and just turn all that evil loose on unsuspected, innocent people. And we haven't helped those people. I want it all to be different. I would love to change the end of the story, but I can't.
This is Patricia. She was pretty. She lived for me. She didn't deserve what she really deserved. It's unimaginable what she went through because of my brother.
I didn't do anything, but I was blamed for it. Just because I was his sister. We were guilty by association.
We live in a very rural community, and it was always thought that I was involved because he lived with me, and, you know, she was my neighbor. I can hear people whispering, you know, say this is John Rose's sister.
Eulalia was so upset because they thought she had something to do with it. They just about tormented that girl to death. And in the end, they found out that she did not have nothing to do with it. But she was so devastated. Okay, if this happened, how many more happened? Because of all the other times that I wondered over the years about what he'd been doing. I think there was more. I think Patricia was Johnny's last victim. I think there are more across the country when he was driving a truck.
I believe he did. He said he killed 204 people. 204 people he killed. That's what he said.
There was one story he told Mama. He talked about picking a girl up, and it was in Arizona, in a truck stop. And he carried this girl for 3 days through the desert. And he dropped her off in the middle of the desert, and this girl was dead. And he may have just been running his mouth. But the way he said those things, the way he talked, it make your skin crawl. You see the eyes? You see the demon in him? He's in another place. I know he's in prison here, so I don't see Johnny there. I don't know who he is. Oh my goodness.
That was the picture, the last interview that he gave. And he spoke to a reporter.
This was right before he was executed. I'm just gonna give you this back. I don't even want to look at that. That is awful. That gives me chills all the way up and down my body.
She said they won't be able to kill him in front of his mother. I said, Mama, they're gonna kill him. They're gonna kill him in front of you, Mama. Couldn't wrap her mind around him, killing him in front of her.
We were downstairs waiting. That's where Mom told us to wait. We prayed for Johnny's soul because we weren't sure where Johnny was going. Oh, I knew the minute he died. Me and Eulalia were holding hands, and Eulalia gasped. And I looked at her and I said, he's gone, ain't he? Eulalia let him leave.
Mom was coming down the stairs, and I'm looking at her, you know, and she just smiles at me. She just smiles and says, it's over. I knew right then my mama would be okay.
Me and Eulalia, we've got real close in the last 5 years. There ain't nobody left but me and her. She's my rock right now. I love her. I do. I believe that Eulalia's gonna be okay now. because she released some of the pain that she felt from what Johnny did, because he was eating her alive. And now it's not anymore. And she feels so much lighter. She feels so much better, and I'm so proud.
I love my brother. I really love him. I miss him. It just always went. He was my best friend. You don't really that you never know anybody completely. You don't know what's going on in somebody else's mind.
What could we have done to protect that girl? Because she was so innocent. In the end.
It started with a photograph, a faded Polaroid buried under 27 years of dust wedged between yellowed pages of an old family album that no one had opened since the summer of 1995. It wasn't the kind of picture that should have meant anything, a backyard barbecue laughter frozen mid-motion, a blur of faces lost to time. But on the bottom corner, barely visible under the soft gloss of memory, a print, a smudge, a fingerprint, one that didn't belong to anyone in the photo, one that would break open a mystery that had haunted an entire town. Back in June 1995, Hollow Creek, New York was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, or thought they did, a town that locked its doors more out of habit than fear. Summer rolled in that year with the smell of rain on hot pavement and the steady hum of cicadas coating the nights in sound. On June 11th, 24-year-old Emily Carter vanished. She was last seen leaving her part-time job at a diner off Route 214 just after 9 p.m. She told her manager she was headed home. She never made it. Her car was found the next morning, door's unlocked purse still inside keys dangling from the ignition. The driver's seat was pushed too far back, as if someone else had been there, someone taller. On the ground near the car door, officers found a single silver earring twisted bent, streaked with mud. Emily's disappearance ripped through the town like lightning. Volunteers scoured the woods, the rivers, the abandoned mills. Helicopters swept overhead. Dogs picked up faint trails that led nowhere. Her parents begged for answers on local TV. Detectives chased every lead, a coworker with an unverified alibi, a boyfriend who seemed too calm a drifter spotted near the gas station that night, but every lead collapsed into silence. The case went cold by winter. Years passed. Families moved on. Shops changed hands, and Hollow Creek buried its ghosts. The Carter house stood on the hill windows, shuttered porch sagging a shrine to the daughter who never came home. Her mother, Helen, kept every clipping, every police report, every photograph in a box beneath her bed. She called it the box of maybe. Maybe one day something inside it would make sense. That day didn't come for almost 3 decades. In 2022, after Helen's death, Emily's younger brother, Daniel Carter, returned to clear out the family home. He opened closets sealed for years, found drawers still filled with the smell of Emily's perfume journals that stopped mid-sentence reminders of a life frozen in 1995. And in one box at the very bottom, the Polaroids. He almost threw them away, but as he flipped through the pictures, he noticed something strange. In one of them, Emily stood by the porch railing laughing with someone who wasn't fully visible, just an arm, a bit of a sleeve, a shape cut off by the frame. Daniel didn't recognize the shirt, a flannel pattern, dark with sweat. But what caught his eye wasn't the fabric, it was the fingerprint. A perfect half-moon smudge pressed into the glossy corner of the photo. He brought it to the police. At first, no one thought much of it. The Hollow Creek Police Department had seen its share of false hope from old evidence, but one detective, Sarah Miles, newly assigned to the cold case unit, decided to take a look. She scanned the photo under UV light and saw what the naked eye couldn't. The ridge detail was intact, a full, partial print preserved for 27 years. When they ran it through the state database, the system hesitated a flicker, a processing delay, and then the alert tone that every cold case detective both hopes for and dreads, match found. The name that came up stunned everyone, Patrick Hale. Back in 1995, Hale was a local handyman. He'd fixed roofs, painted houses, mowed lawns. He was quiet, polite, forgettable. He'd even volunteered in the search for Emily. But 5 years later, he'd left town after a bar fight, moved to Pennsylvania, built a new life, until 2010, when he was arrested for assault in another state. His fingerprints entered the national database, but no one connected him to Hollow Creek, not until that photo. Detective Miles reopened the case file. The old crime scene photos came out of storage, Emily's car under the trees, the earring, the footprints in the mud. Technology had changed. DNA that was useless in 1995 could now tell stories. She sent the earring to the state lab. The results came back trace male DNA, under the clasp, degraded but viable. It matched Patrick Hale. The discovery hit the town like a tremor. After 27 years, the case that had defined a generation was alive again. Local news stations swarmed Hollow Creek. New York 1995 cold case reopened, fingerprint on old photo leads. To suspect, the headlines read. Detective Miles described it later. It was surreal. We'd been staring at this ghost for years, and suddenly it had a face. But for Daniel Carter, it wasn't closure. It was fury. Hale had been in their home. He'd attended Emily's memorial vigil. He'd hugged Helen, offered condolences, carried boxes for the search team. The thought of his fingerprint sitting there, pressed against a photo of Emily laughing, it felt like betrayal layered over time. The arrest came quietly. Early morning, a pale sky over Pennsylvania Hale, stepping out for the newspaper when unmarked cars rolled up the driveway. He didn't resist. He didn't speak. When asked about Emily Carter, he said only one thing: I don't remember her. But the evidence did. Inside his storage unit, investigators found a box marked tools. Among the rusted wrenches and nails were old Polaroids, dozens of them. Women faces, half-cut bodies, framed in strange, obsessive detail. None of them had names written on the back, except one, Emily, June, 95. The photo Daniel found was part of a set. Hale had taken them during a repair job at the Carter's house weeks before Emily vanished. He'd captured her unknowingly, moving through the background, fixing her hair, setting a plate on the porch, smiling at something off camera. Stolen moments of normal life turned into trophies. The prints on those photos told a story of their own, his thumb, his index, his obsession frozen in time. But even as the evidence piled up, there were questions. Why that night? Why her? And what really happened after she left the diner? Witnesses came forward, memories long buried surfacing like bones after rain. A waitress remembered Hale sitting at the counter that night watching Emily through the window as she closed up. Another recalled seeing his truck parked down the road from her house around 9:30. But the timeline was fractured, distorted by decades of forgetting. Detective Miles reconstructed every step: the diner, the road, the car. She walked the same route Emily had driven, stood at the exact spot where her car was found. The woods were different now, overgrown, reclaimed by time, but under the leaves they found something. A length of rope, frayed, sun-bleached, buried in the soil. It matched the fibers found in the trunk of Hale's truck, seized in 1995 and stored in evidence forgotten. Every discovery felt like opening an old wound. Hollow Creek became the town divided. Some refused to believe Hale was guilty. Others said they always knew something was off about him. Reporters dug up his past, uncovering complaints from women in nearby towns, rumors of stalking, trespassing, but never enough to arrest. Until now. The case became national news. Cold case solved after 27 years, forgotten photo reveals fingerprint of killer. The story spread, shared, dissected. But for Daniel Carter, it wasn't about headlines. It was about a sister who'd never grown old, a laugh that had never faded, and a photo that had waited nearly 3 decades to speak. When Hale was brought back to New York in cuffs, the crowd outside the courthouse was silent. Some held candles, others held photos of Emily, reporters shouted questions. Hale looked up, once eyes blank, and smiled. Just a faint, unnerving curve of the mouth that froze the crowd. Inside, Detective Miles watched through the glass. It wasn't victory, she said later. It was something colder, like the past breathing again. And in the evidence room, under harsh fluorescent light, the Polaroid that started it all sat sealed in plastic. A photograph once meant to capture joy now held the fingerprint of death proof that time doesn't erase guilt, it only waits for the right light to reveal it. But as the case moved to trial, whispers began. Some things didn't fit. Some timelines didn't align. The fingerprint proved Hale had touched the photo. The DNA tied him to the earring, but no one could say with absolute certainty where Emily's body was. After 27 years, the Earth still kept her secret. And that's when the second photograph surfaced. The second photograph didn't come from evidence storage. It came from a stranger, a woman who'd never set foot in Hollow Creek. 2 weeks after Patrick Hale's arrest, the local sheriff's office received a call from Samantha Lewis, a real estate agent in Albany. She said she'd been sorting through an abandoned house scheduled for demolition, a small cottage on the outskirts empty since the late 90s. Inside a drawer, she'd found an envelope marked only with a single word, handwritten in faint blue ink, Emily. When she opened it, there were 2 Polaroids. One showed the same girl as the others, young, smiling, unaware she was being watched. The other showed something else, a forest clearing, and in the background, half hidden by trees, a figure lying still. The image was grainy, overexposed, but it was enough. Enough to reignite the fear that Hollow Creek thought it had buried forever. Detective Sarah Miles drove to Albany that night. She studied the photos under a magnifier, tracing every corner, every reflection. The edges were the same kind of film as the originals, same chemical signature, same date code. These weren't copies. They were real. And in the corner of the second picture, almost invisible under the glare of flash, was a fragment of a license plate. A few hours later, the database returned a 1987 Ford pickup, registered to Patrick Hale. That discovery turned the entire investigation on its head. The photo hadn't just connected Hale to Emily, it placed him at what could finally be a dump site, a possible burial ground. The next morning, a search team descended on the coordinates triangulated from the background of the photo. The forest had changed over time, trees, fallen brush, thick paths erased, but one thing hadn't moved: the old power lines cutting through the hill behind Hollow Creek. Using those as a reference, they pinpointed the spot. Dogs picked up a scent within an hour. The soil was soft beneath the first few inches, and when they dug deeper, they found bones. Human. Fragile, pale, curled like a question. It took days of excavation and analysis, but dental records confirmed what Daniel Carter already knew the moment he saw the news. They had found Emily. Her remains were buried shallow, less than 2 feet under the surface. Around her neck was a thin silver chain, broken clasp still intact, the other half of the earring found by her car. The town of Hollow Creek froze in collective silence. For the first time in nearly 3 decades, Emily Carter was coming home. The footage of her casket returning under a gray October sky played across every local network. Headlines ran nonstop: 1995, cold case, solved missing woman, found after 27 years. But behind the relief, something darker simmered. Patrick Hale maintained his innocence. In the interrogation room, under the hum of fluorescent lights, he spoke in fragments. "I didn't kill her," he said. "I helped her. She was running from someone. I tried to stop it. When asked who she was running from, he looked straight at the detective and whispered, 'You'll see.'" For Detective Miles, it wasn't the words that bothered her. It was the calm, the conviction. Like a man rehearsing a lie he'd told himself so many times he'd come to believe it. The evidence said otherwise. The DNA, the prints, the photos, the rope fibers, the truck. But the more they looked, the more holes appeared. The timeline didn't fully match Hale's known movements. The phone records from the night of June 11th were inconclusive calls placed but never traced. And then one more anomaly. Among Hale's belongings in a sealed envelope labeled "Miscellaneous Detectives" found a photograph that didn't belong to the Carter case at all. It showed another woman similar age standing outside a diner. Different town. Different year. And on the back, written in the same careful handwriting, Melissa June, 94. The same month, the same pattern. Detective Miles sent the name through the system: Melissa Trent, missing, reported last seen in 1994, 30 miles south of Hollow Creek. Her case had gone cold, too. Suddenly, what had looked like closure began to unravel into something much larger. The DA's office had enough to charge Hale with Emily's murder, but the new discovery forced them to widen the scope. A special task force was created Operation June. Their mandate re-examine any missing persons between 1993 and 1996 that fit the pattern. Old files came back to life, faded reports, handwritten witness statements, a trail of forgotten women, each case separated by months by miles, but united by the same invisible thread. And through it all, one thing stood out: the photos. In each of Hale's Polaroids, the composition was meticulous. A window frame, a doorway, a porch light, all perfectly centered, as though he'd been studying something. Or someone. But one image recovered from his camera bag was different. It showed a reflection, Hale's reflection in a mirror, behind his subject. He was smiling. Detective Miles couldn't shake the feeling that the photos weren't just keepsakes. They were messages, taunts, a record of control. Meanwhile, Daniel Carter spiraled. The trial dragged on and the media turned his family's pain into spectacle. He watched as reporters camped outside the courthouse dissecting every rumor. To them, Emily was a headline. To him, she was still the sister who'd walked him to the bus stop every morning. He began going through the old boxes again, searching for something he'd missed. That's when he found it, a cassette tape unlabeled, tucked behind a stack of VHS recordings. When he played it, the static gave way to a faint voice. Emily's. She was talking to someone, laughing, and then a man's voice. The quality was too poor to identify, but the tone was unmistakable. Calm, deep, the same tone that had haunted every interview clip of Patrick Hale. He turned it over to Detective Miles. Forensic audio analysis confirmed it. Hale's voice matched. The conversation dated to June 5th, 1995, 6 days before Emily vanished. She'd met him willingly. But what did she want from him? The answer came from Emily's old journal, one of the few things Helen Carter had kept locked in a separate drawer. In her final entry, written days before she disappeared, Emily mentioned a man helping her fix something she'd found by accident. The next line was smeared, the ink blurred by what might have been tears. Only 2 words were legible: the photograph. That single clue reignited the entire investigation. Detective Miles re-examined every detail, every image. She realized something chilling: the fingerprint on the original Polaroid, the one that started it all, wasn't the only one. Under a different light, a second partial print appeared. Fainter, smaller, female. It didn't match Emily. The lab confirmed it belonged to unknown female #2. Suddenly, the photo that had been hailed as proof of Hale's guilt became evidence of something more complex, a moment shared by 2 people captured by someone else. Was there another woman involved? An accomplice? Miles started to dig into Hale's past again, his phone bills, his work logs, his repairs. In one record, she found a name that kept reappearing: Lydia Graves. Former co-worker, painter, last known address, same cottage in Albany, where the second photo had been found. Lydia had vanished in 1998, declared missing after failing to show up for work. Her disappearance had been written off as voluntary. She'd left a note saying she needed to disappear for a while. No one looked deeper. Until now, her fingerprint matched the secondary print on the Polaroid. The realization hit Detective Miles like ice. Lydia Graves had been there, possibly behind the camera, possibly part of something bigger, a partnership, a pact, a shared obsession. She ordered a search of the Albany property again. This time they dug deeper. Beneath the floorboards, sealed in a rusted tin box, they found letters, hundreds of them, each written in Hale's handwriting, addresses scrawled, but never sent. The content was cryptic, obsessive, looping the same phrases. She was perfect. The light was right that day. You saw it too. The final letter, dated 1998, ended abruptly. If they find me, say it was only me. Lydia's body was never found. By winter, the story had grown beyond Hollow Creek. What began as a single missing girl had become a network of ghosts, each Polaroid another tombstone without a grave. And yet, even with all the discoveries, there was one truth that refused to die. Emily had been found because of a photograph. A frozen smile, a careless fingerprint, a fragment of light that refused to fade. Detective Miles stood in the evidence room one night, staring at the photos pinned on the board. Rows of faces, victims, dates, locations. The air smelled of paper and old chemicals. He wasn't just keeping memories. She whispered. He was keeping time. Because every photo, every date, every disappearance, they all fell on the same week of June. The same 7 days every year. And the next one was coming. The pattern was too precise to ignore. June 6th, 1993. June 11th, 1994. June 11th, 1995. Every missing woman, every photograph, every trace of Patrick Hale's shadow fell within the same window. 1 week every year, always June. Detective Sarah Miles pinned the dates to the wall in red string, the map of upstate New York glowing under the dim light of her office. The lines converged like veins pulsing toward the same heart, Hollow Creek. It wasn't random. It was ritual. She didn't believe in coincidence, not anymore. By now, the town had become a living crime scene. Journalists swarmed the diner where Emily worked. Tourists came to stare at the old house on Ridge Hill Road, snapping photos of tragedy like souvenirs. The locals hated it, the noise, the cameras, the way the world had turned their pain into curiosity. But behind the media circus, Detective Miles saw something deeper. The silence between the dates, the years Hale vanished from payrolls, the blank spaces in his timeline. She requested travel records, gas receipts, toll cameras, anything. That's when she found it. Every June, from 1993 to 1998, Patrick Hale withdrew money from the same ATM. Same date, same amount, different towns, but all within a 100-mile radius, and every time a missing woman was reported within days. She traced the pattern like a pulse, each point marking the rhythm of something obsessive, and then, in 1999, it stopped. No withdrawals, no disappearances, nothing. Hale left New York and moved to Pennsylvania. For 23 years, the rhythm was silent, until the photo surfaced. That was what terrified her most, because if the pattern was ritual, it meant Hale didn't stop because he wanted to. He stopped because he was interrupted, or because someone else took over. The letters found beneath Lydia Graves's floorboards replayed in her head. You saw it too. Detective Miles returned to the cottage in Albany, this time alone. The air was damp, thick with rot. The wallpaper peeled like scabs. She moved slowly through the room's flashlight, cutting through the dust. In the back bedroom, she found something she hadn't noticed before a closet door nailed shut. When she pried it open, the smell hit first. Old film chemicals. Then the light of her flashlight caught glass. Dozens of jars lined the shelves, each labeled with dates. Inside, strips of developed negatives floated in preservation fluid, their images ghostly and reversed. Faces, shapes' eyes, staring from the dark. On the inside of the closet door, scratched into the wood, were words, June comes again. At headquarters, Miles laid out the negatives under sterile light. Many were ruined, but a few were clear enough to scan. What she saw made her stomach tighten. Some were of Emily. Others women no one had identified. And one more recent showed a woman standing at a gas station. The timestamp embedded in the film read June 2021. Hale had been living in Pennsylvania by then. The photo shouldn't exist. She called the forensics team. The paper stock wasn't Polaroid, it was newer modern instant film, which meant someone else had taken it. Someone who knew the pattern. The realization changed everything. Maybe Hale hadn't acted alone. Maybe he'd taught someone. She reviewed every photo again, every composition, searching for detail, reflection, background, clue. In one image, the corner of a mirror caught a silhouette. Not Hale, a woman. Shoulders, narrow hair tied back. Someone familiar. Miles compared it to Lydia Graves's old driver's license photo. The angle of the jaw, the hairline it matched. Lydia wasn't just present. She'd continued the ritual. But that raised another question. If Lydia had vanished in 1998, who took the 2021 photo? A successor. A student. A ghost. Copying ghosts. The deeper she went, the colder it got. Meanwhile, Daniel Carter had become a quiet fixture in town, refusing interviews, avoiding crowds. But at night, he drove the same road where his sister's car had been found. At headlights, slicing through the trees, replaying that last night again and again. On one of those drives, he noticed something strange. Near the creek bed, nailed to a tree, a Polaroid, faded by rain corners curling. He pulled it down. It showed the diner. Empty parking lot, a single light on inside. And at the bottom corner, written in smudged ink, June comes again. He took it straight to Detective Miles. She analyzed it under magnification and froze. The fingerprint on the corner wasn't Hale's. It wasn't Lydia Graves's either. It was hers. Sarah Miles's own fingerprint. For a moment, she thought it was a lab error, a contamination from handling evidence, but the print was embedded beneath the ink, fused with the photo's emulsion. Impossible to fake. It had been there since the moment the picture developed. Someone had been inside her office. Someone had access to the evidence. The department launched an internal review. Surveillance footage from the evidence room showed a figure in a hooded jacket entering at 2:14 a.m., 2 nights before the Polaroid appeared. The footage cut to static moments later. When it returned, the room was empty, but a photo was missing from the evidence board. Whoever it was, they knew. The system knew the cameras knew her fingerprint would be there. The realization settled like lead in her chest. This wasn't just about reopening a cold case. Someone was rewriting it. As Hale's trial approached, the courtroom became theater. Prosecutors built their narrative, the fingerprint, the DNA, the photographs. The defense painted Hale as a scapegoat, a man framed by circumstance, haunted by obsession, but not a killer. Then, mid-trial, a package arrived at the courthouse. No return address. Inside, a single Polaroid. It showed the courtroom itself, empty chairs lined like ghosts. The timestamp read, June 6th, 2023. Detective Miles stared at it for a long time. The implication was clear. Whoever was behind this, whoever continued the ritual, was watching them now. The next morning, Hale refused to testify. He sat motionless, eyes fixed on Miles. When court adjourned, he leaned toward her as the guards escorted him away. His whisper was almost a sigh. June's not mine anymore. That night, she couldn't sleep. She pulled every file she had, every photo, every scrap of handwriting. She compared Lydia's notes, Hale's letters, the new Polaroids. And there, hidden in the handwriting loops of each J and C, was a small, deliberate mark, the same in all of them. A symbol, 2 interlocked circles. She ran it through databases, art archives, cult registries, nothing. Until an archivist at SUNY recognized it. It was a mark used by a short-lived photography collective in the 1980s, Circle of June, founded in upstate New York. Its motto, Capture Truth Before It Fades. One of its founding members, Lydia Graves. The collective had disbanded after a fire destroyed their studio in 1989. 2 members died. 1 name from the roster remained unaccounted for. Patrick Hale. Miles realized the cold case wasn't about one murder or even a pattern of them. It was about art, distorted, perverted, turned into ritual. The June dates weren't random anniversaries. They were exhibition dates. Each disappearance coincided with the week the collective once held its annual showcase. Hale and Lydia hadn't been killing out of impulse. They were preserving their art. And someone was continuing the tradition. The 2021 photograph proved the ritual had outlived them. But who? The answer began to reveal itself in the smallest, most ordinary way. An intern in the department, Elena Ross, had joined the cold case unit 6 months earlier. Quiet, efficient, always there before anyone else. When Miles reviewed the entry logs from the night of the evidence breach, Elena's badge had been scanned at 2:13 a.m. She confronted her the next day. Elena didn't deny it. She simply looked at Miles and said, "You can't stop June. You can only join it." Security moved in, but she smiled that slow, eerie smile Hale had worn in every photo. When they searched her apartment, they found a dark room hidden behind a false wall. Inside, drying lines heavy with Polaroids. The most recent one showed Detective Sarah Miles at her desk, head bowed under the glow of her computer screen. Taken from inside the office. The caption read, "June comes again." The arrest made headlines across the state. Cold case turns cult. Police intern linked to 1995 murder ring. Hale was transferred to a secure psychiatric facility while the investigation widened. The evidence tied Elena to at least 3 more unsolved disappearances between 2018 and 2022, all following the same ritual window. But questions lingered. How much had she learned from Hale, from Lydia's journals, and why the obsession with June? In her first interview, Elena said softly, "It's not about June. It's about the light. It only looks perfect then." When asked what perfect meant, she smiled again. When the past and present blur, That night, after 36 hours without sleep, Detective Miles returned to her apartment. She poured a drink, stared at the wall where she'd pinned every timeline, every thread. June 6th circled in red, only 3 days away. Her phone buzzed, a message, unknown number. No text, just an image. A Polaroid. It showed her apartment window. The caption beneath it, scrawled in faint blue ink, "The light's right again." She dropped the glass. The ice hit the floor first, shattering the silence. Outside, the streetlights flickered. And somewhere in the dark, a camera clicked. The flash came first, a burst of white through the curtains, too quick, too clean to be lightning. Then silence, the kind that feels alive. Detective Sarah Miles froze. The clock read 2:11 a.m. She didn't move, not even to breathe. The city outside was asleep, but she could feel it. Someone was out there, watching. She went to the window slowly, careful not to step on the broken glass from her drink. The street below was empty. A single car sat idling by the curb engine, running headlights off, and then it pulled away, disappearing into the night like a shadow exhaling. On the windowsill, resting on the cold glass, was a Polaroid, still warm. Her own face stared back at her from the photo, caught in the exact moment she'd looked up at the flash. The timestamp at the bottom read June 6th, 2:11 a.m. She knew what that meant. The week had begun. The ritual had started again. By dawn, her apartment was a sealed crime scene. Officers swept for prints, for fibers, for any sign of entry. Nothing. Whoever took that picture had been close enough to frame it perfectly, but left no trace. The blinds had been cut, the latch unbroken. Inside, Job 1 officer asked. Sarah didn't answer. Because she already knew, whoever it was, they wanted her to feel what the others had felt, to know the countdown had begun. At headquarters, she locked herself in the evidence room. Every case file, every photo, every scrap of paper from Hale and Lydia's world surrounded her like a storm. She played the interrogation tapes again. Hale's voice echoed through the speakers. June's not mine anymore. If he was telling the truth, that meant the ritual had passed on not to one person, but to many, like a virus carried in obsession. And it always began with a photograph. She pinned the newest Polaroid on the board, her face staring back under that flash. Beneath it, she wrote one word, target. The days that followed blurred into one long unease. June 7th. June 8th. Every morning a new message arrived, sometimes slipped under her door, sometimes emailed from addresses that vanished minutes later. Each one contained an image. June 7th. Her car parked outside the precinct, shot from across the street. June 8th. Her reflection in a cafe window, unaware of the camera. June 9th. Her hands on the steering wheel mid-turn, taken from directly behind her. The captions were always the same, perfect light. The photos were too precise to be random. Someone knew her schedule, her routes, her routines. Someone close. She started checking every mirror, every reflective surface. Every glint of glass felt like an eye. By June 10th, exhaustion blurred into paranoia. She hadn't slept in 2 days. She'd stopped going home. The station became her only safe place, if such a thing still existed. But that night, when she turned on her desk lamp, something caught her attention, the faint shimmer of fingerprints on the bulb. She dusted it. It was her own, but they were upside down. The next morning, the district attorney called. Hale had been found dead in his cell, apparent suicide, hung with his bedsheet. But there was no note, only a single Polaroid taped to the wall. The image showed his cell door closed. On the back, written in the same blue ink as before, "She knows the truth now." Sarah stared at the photo until her hands shook. Whoever was behind this had access not only to her, but to Hale. Inside the prison, that meant power, connections. The DA ordered a full lockdown on the evidence. Every Polaroid cataloged, every photo cross-checked for duplicates. That's when they found something that had gone unnoticed. One of the original Polaroids, the very first one Daniel Carter had brought in, wasn't the same anymore. Under certain light, new lines had appeared, faint, invisible under normal conditions. Someone had etched into the photo's surface with a razor blade 11:59, June 11th. That was tomorrow night. The same date Emily Carter disappeared in 1995. The same date every disappearance since. Sarah knew what it meant. The ritual always ended on June 11th, the final photograph. She went back through the cold case reports. All the victims had vanished or died between 11:45 and midnight on that same night, each last seen near a camera, a window, or a reflective surface, like they'd been waiting to be captured. She called Daniel Carter. He didn't answer. When she reached his house, the door was ajar. No signs of struggle. Inside, the TV was on static, humming through the silence. On the coffee table lay a Polaroid camera loaded, still damp from use. The photograph inside showed Daniel's living room, empty, and on the back, written in that same looping script, "She comes home tonight." The search for Daniel Carter spread fast. Roadblocks, patrols, helicopters. The town of Hollow Creek was once again a stage for fear. Reporters flooded in whispering copycat cult June curse. At 9 p.m., a 911 call came in. A man had been seen near the old Carter property carrying a camera walking toward the woods. Sarah was there in minutes. The air smelled of rain and pine, the same woods where Emily's remains had been found. Her flashlight cut through the trees, sweeping over roots and mud. Then she saw it, a flicker of light deeper in the forest, a flashbulb. She ran. Branches clawed at their jacket. Her breath turned to fog. Another flash closer this time. She called out Daniel's name. No answer. When she reached the clearing, the beam of her light caught him, standing motionless beside a tree camera in hand, his face, pale eyes glassy. "Daniel," she said, "put it down." He didn't move. For a moment, everything was still. Then, slowly, he turned the camera toward her and smiled. "I see it now," he whispered. The light, the flash went off. Sarah stumbled back, blinded. By the time her vision cleared, Daniel was gone. Only the camera remained lying in the grass, the photo ejecting from its slot. She picked it up. The image was still developing, her frozen mid-reach eyes, wide mouth open. The caption underneath, June 11th. They found Daniel's body an hour later, face down in the creek. Cause of death, drowning. But the coroner couldn't explain the faint pattern on his skin, a circular mark burned into his wrist, 2 interlocked rings. The same symbol from Hale's letters. Sarah stared at the report until the letters blurred. She thought she'd seen every horror this case could offer, but the deeper it reached, the more it twisted back toward her. Every thread led not just to the past, but to her own reflection. Back at the station, she reviewed the footage from her body camera, the moment of the flash, the light, the smoke, the frame. And then, just before the image cut to white, she saw it, a second figure standing behind Daniel, a woman, hair tied back, smiling. The next day, she drove to the old photography school in Albany, where the Circle of June had once held its exhibitions. The building was condemned, now boarded up, vines crawling across the facade. Inside, the air was thick with mold and memory. She followed the remnants of what had once been the gallery, a space-cracked tile floor's walls, still scarred by soot. In the center, an old projector stood covered in dust. She wiped it clean. It still worked. When she turned it on, reels hidden in the machine began to play. Flickering frames spilled across the wall, grainy images of faces, women laughing, turning, disappearing, each one stamped with the same handwritten title, June. The footage wasn't just archival. It was recent. Some clips were shot in color digital transfer showing modern streets, police cars, herself. Someone had been here documenting everything, continuing the collective's work. Then came the last reel, a single shot of an empty room. The camera zoomed in slowly until it filled the screen with a reflection. Sarah's reflection, standing where she was standing now. She turned. The projector light flickered once. And on the far wall, in fresh red paint, 5 words stretched across the brick. "The final light is you." She stumbled backward, reaching for her gun, but the air behind her shifted. A breath. A voice whispered near her ear, soft, steady, familiar. "It has to end with the perfect photograph." The flash erupted, blinding, soundless, and then darkness. When the team arrived an hour later, they found the projector still running. The film burned halfway through smoke, curling toward the ceiling. In the corner lay Sarah's badge, her gun, and a Polaroid camera. The last photo developed on the floor. It showed an empty room, only light. Morning came to Hollow Creek like a curtain lifting on a nightmare that refused to end. The sky hung low, colorless, the air thick with humidity and whispers. By 8 a.m., every news van in the county lined the road outside the abandoned photography school. Reporters murmured into cameras about the missing detective, their voices trembling between curiosity and fear. Inside the building, investigators moved in silence. The old projector still smoked reels melted into black ribbons. The air smelled of metal and film and something older memory, maybe. On the cracked tile floor lay Detective Sarah Miles's badge, her sidearm, and that single Polaroid camera. The photo it produced had already been sealed in evidence. An empty room, only light. Chief forensic analyst Paul Henderson studied it for hours under magnification. "It's impossible," he muttered. The emulsion pattern showed no shadow, no lens distortion, no subject, just the light itself. But embedded deep within the image grain was a shape that wasn't visible to the eye, two interlocked circles. The symbol of the Circle of June. The press called it the vanishing of Detective Miles. To the department, it was something else. A message. By noon, the governor ordered a joint task force, state police, FBI local detectives. They named it Operation Junefire. Every member of the Circle of June still alive or unaccounted for was to be found. At the center of it all was Agent Caroline Vance, a profiler, known for chasing killers who turned their crimes into performance. She arrived from Quantico that evening, trenchcoat, still damp from rain, eyes already scanning the faces around her. "We're not hunting a person," she said quietly. "We're hunting an idea." Her first stop was Sarah Miles's office. Everything had been left untouched. The board of Polaroids, the web of red string, the word "target" under the detective's own photo. Vance stood there a long time, tracing the chaos. She was close, she whispered. Too close. Then she noticed something. No one else had a small frame on the edge of the board, half covered by papers. A clipping from a 1995 newspaper. The photo showed a crowd gathered outside the Carter house. In the background, barely visible, a woman holding a camera. Lydia Graves. But standing beside it, her head turned away, was another woman, Sarah Miles's mother. Records showed that Laura Miles had attended the same art workshops as Lydia Graves in the late 80s. They'd both studied under the same mentor, Professor Eli Marrow, founder of the Circle of June. The revelation hit the task force like a tremor. Detective Miles wasn't just an investigator. She was tied by blood and history to the origin of the cult. Agent Vance drove to Marrow's last known address, a care facility on the edge of Buffalo. The man was 82 now, his mind fraying, but when she showed him a photograph of Sarah Miles, his eyes sharpened for the first time in years. She came here once, he rasped, said she wanted to understand the light. "What light, Professor?" "The one that remembers." He smiled, distant. "We never killed for it. We only captured it. But then they wanted permanence." "Who's they?" His smile widened. "The ones who still wait for June." Before Vance could press further, he closed his eyes, whispering a final phrase like a prayer. The next frame completes the circle. Back in Hollow Creek, the investigation deepened. Analysts mapped every known photograph linked to the Circle of June. There were 47 images in total, spanning 3 decades. When plotted on a timeline, the coordinates of each photo formed a spiral pattern across the map, its center landing precisely on the old Carter property, the same ground where Emily Carter was found. Agent Vance ordered a full excavation. Drones scanned the soil. Ground-penetrating radar painted the screen with layers of history disturbances, foundations, forgotten tunnels. Beneath the Carter house, they found a sealed chamber. The entrance had been concreted over sometime around 1996. When the team broke through, the first thing they saw was color, the dull shimmer of Polaroids hanging from strings, hundreds of them forming a circle on the walls. In the center, an empty chair spotlighted by a shaft of daylight filtering through a crack in the ceiling. Every photo in that underground room showed the same subject, different years, different light, always the same woman, Sarah Miles. Agent Vance felt the air tighten around her. "She's alive," she said softly. "Or someone wants us to think she is." The prints on the chair confirmed nothing smudged partial, but the dust told another story. Footprints, 2 sets, one small one larger. The smaller led to the wall of photos, then stopped. The larger led back toward the sealed entrance. Someone had been there recently. That night, rain fell hard over Hollow Creek. Vance sat in her motel room, the Polaroids spread across the bed like fragments of a dream. Every image of Sarah looked slightly different, older, sharper, like someone had been documenting her transformation. At 2 a.m., her phone buzzed. Unknown number, a message, a single image. Sarah Miles, standing in front of the motel window. Timestamp June 11th, 1:59 a.m. She jumped to her feet, gun drawn, tearing open the curtains. Nothing outside but rain. She checked the hallway empty, but when she turned back toward the bed, the Polaroids had changed. Every photo now showed the same thing, not Sarah, but the back of Vance's own head, and under each one, the same handwritten caption. The light chooses who remembers. The storm outside roared. The lights flickered. For a second, she thought she saw movement reflected in the dark television screen, someone standing behind her camera, raised. She spun around. The room was empty. But on the TV, a new image blinked to life, the underground chamber beneath the Carter house, the chair, a figure sitting in it. Sarah Miles? Her eyes were open. She was speaking. No audio, only subtitles appearing across the screen in real time. It's not them. It's what they left behind. Then the feed cut to static. The next day, the motel's security cameras confirmed what she feared. The feed at 1:58 a.m. showed Vance alone in her room. At 1:59, a brief flash of light filled the frame, then nothing. When the power returned, an hour later, the timestamp jumped forward exactly 1 year, June 11th, 2024. And there, in the grainy footage, stood Sarah Miles unchanged, same clothes, same expression. She walked to the window, looked straight into the camera, and whispered something no one could hear. The audio engineers enhanced the clip for days. Finally, they deciphered 3 words. Find the negatives. Operation Junefire shifted focus. Every surviving piece of Circle of June equipment was cataloged, every storage unit searched. In one of Lydia Graves' old properties near Schenectady, they discovered a hidden freezer, rusted shut. Inside were sealed canisters of undeveloped film, perfectly preserved. When processed, the images revealed not murders, not rituals, but moments. Random scenes from Hollow Creek children on bicycles, parades, sunsets, quiet streets. And threaded between them one constant figure, a woman walking through each frame, never facing the camera. Sarah Miles. The timestamps spanned decades 1995, 2001, 2015, 2023. Always June. As if she had been there across time, captured and recaptured, a ghost stitched into the film itself. Agent Vance watched the final reel project onto the wall. The last frame lingered longer than it should have. Sarah turning eyes, meeting the lens for the first time. And this time she spoke directly. Light remembers everything. Then the screen went dark. By the end of that summer, Hollow Creek emptied out again. The tourists left. The reporters moved on. But at night, locals said you could still see flashes in the hills, tiny bursts of white light flickering through the trees, always around the same week in June. The official report closed the case with a single line. The disappearance of Detective Sarah Miles remains unsolved. Evidence suggests possible psychological contagion within surviving members of the Circle of June. Unofficially, no one stayed near the Carter property after dark. The house was demolished. The land left to rot. But every year on June 11th, someone mailed a single photograph to the state police. No return address. Always the same image. A beam of sunlight breaking through trees. No figures, no shadows, only light. And at the bottom, in the faintest blue ink, the circle remains open. The investigation into the Circle of June moved underground both literally and metaphorically. Theories multiplied like reflections in a broken mirror. Was it a cult? An art movement gone wrong? A psychological experiment that slipped from control. Whatever it had been, its survivors had scattered, their names erased from public record, but every path led backward to 1983, the year the Circle first formed at a small liberal arts college in upstate New York under the mentorship of Professor Eli Marrow. He'd once called photography the science of resurrection. According to archived papers, Marrow believed that light didn't just reveal reality, it stored it. Every photon he wrote carried a trace of what it touched. To photograph something was to preserve a sliver of time itself. He wanted to prove that with enough precision, a photo could remember what the human mind forgot. He called it memory retention through reflective medium. His students called it obsession. When Agent Caroline Vance reopened the campus archives, she found what everyone else had missed: a storage locker under Marrow's old lab. Inside were boxes of test film labeled only by month. The earliest box, June 1983. Each frame was shot on expired film stock. Some were blurred landscapes, some overexposed portraits, but every roll ended the same way, with an image of blinding white light and a handwritten note beneath it: capture achieved. Vance studied the notes late into the night. The handwriting changed over the years, but the mantra remained identical: capture achieved. She read Marrow's journals, their pages yellow and brittle. The entries began as research logs, then devolved into confessions. The camera is not recording. It is collecting. Every exposure deepens the echo. One day the light will speak back. He'd written that weeks before the fire that destroyed the studio and killed 2 of his students. Officially, the cause was electrical. Unofficially, the surviving students claimed the blaze began after one of them tried to open the frame. No one ever explained what that meant. Vance drove to the ruins of the old studio. The foundation was gone, the land reclaimed by trees. She stood where the dark room had once been, eyes tracing the forest canopy, remembering the words Sarah Miles had spoken in that last transmission: "It's not them. It's what they left behind." That phrase took on new meaning now, because as Vance walked through the overgrown clearing, her phone camera began to glitch. Each photo she took flickered before stabilizing, leaving faint outlines that weren't visible to the naked eye. Shapes, figures, the hint of faces where there should have been only trees. She ran an image analysis back at headquarters. The distortion matched the same wavelength interference seen on the recovered Polaroids, a signature of the film chemistry the Circle had used, one based on a compound banned decades ago. Whatever they had created, it hadn't stayed confined to film. The case shifted again from evidence to phenomena. The FBI called in specialists, physicists, psychologists, even optical engineers. One theory suggested Marrow's group had experimented with light frequencies that could imprint images into the human visual cortex. Another claimed they'd triggered a kind of mass hallucination shared across generations of photographs. But the more Vance read, the less scientific it seemed. In every surviving note, Marrow repeated a single instruction to his students: stand in the light long enough, and it will remember you. He wrote it like an invitation and a warning. By late July, Agent Vance returned to Hollow Creek one last time. The Carter property was gone, now reduced to an empty field, fenced off by caution tape and silence. Still, she brought a camera. She didn't know why. Maybe to prove something or to finish what Sarah had started. She took one photo. Nothing remarkable, just sunlight through leaves. When the image developed, it looked exactly as expected, until the next morning. She woke to find the same photograph lying on her desk, but slightly changed. The angle of the light had shifted. The trees bent differently. And in the distance, just barely visible, stood a silhouette, a woman facing away. The timestamp on the new image was the next day's date. The photo had taken itself. The discovery rattled even the skeptics. The image underwent full forensic analysis film, grain ink pattern, chemical density. Every parameter was consistent with an authentic instant photograph, yet no camera had fired. Residual exposure, one technician said, forcing logic into mystery. Maybe the emulsion reactivated from heat. But Vance had seen the shadow, the curve of the shoulders, the familiar outline. It was Sarah Miles. The photo became classified evidence, sealed under code name Project Afterlight. Only 3 people were cleared to view it. All 3 reported similar reactions: dizziness, a sensation of being watched, and in one case, an impression that the image breathed faintly under changing light. For weeks, the photo was stored in darkness, locked away. But even there, small things began to happen. Motion sensors tripped without cause. Surveillance footage glitched once every hour, always at 11:59 p.m. June 11th had passed, but its shadow hadn't. Agent Vance started to write again the way Sarah had notes that read like confessions. She wrote that she'd begun dreaming in photographs, that when she closed her eyes, she saw flashes, white and weightless. Sometimes she'd hear the faint click of a shutter just before waking. Her colleagues worried she was burning out. She wasn't. She was being pulled in. She returned to the photo one final time alone. The evidence room was silent except for the hum of the fluorescent light. She held the print under the lamp, watching how the image brightened. The colors deepened. Then, for the briefest instant, the woman in the distance turned. Not a full movement, just a tilt of the head. Enough for Vance to see the face. Her own. She dropped the photo, but the flash stayed burned behind her eyes, an afterimage that didn't fade. That night, she left Hollow Creek for good. No resignation, no statement, no goodbye. Her car was found at a rest stop off the Interstate Keys, still in the ignition camera bag on the passenger seat, inside a single undeveloped photo cartridge. When technicians processed it, the image revealed an empty road under morning light. Nothing unusual, except for the reflection in the rearview mirror. A woman in the back seat, smiling. The case files ended there. No trace of Agent Caroline Vance. No new photos received the following year. For the first time since 1995, the week of June passed without a single flash reported in Hollow Creek. But 3 months later, a local photographer hiking through the woods near the old Carter site found something half buried in the soil, a Polaroid camera, the same model used by the original Circle of June. When he developed the remaining film inside, the image came out blank, or almost blank. Under certain light, a faint inscription shimmered across the white surface. Light remembers everything. The same words Sarah Miles had spoken before she vanished. Even now, years later, the story of the Circle of June lives on like an echo. Some call it an unsolved case. Others call it an urban legend. But for the few who've handled the original photographs, who've stood in the dim hum of that evidence room, one truth lingers stronger than any theory. The camera never lies, but it doesn't forget either. And somewhere in the quiet spaces between exposure and shadow, the light is still collecting, waiting for June. They called it the June effect. For a long time, it was only a whisper on message boards, grainy scans of the old photographs, late-night theories, claims that cameras sometimes froze at 11:59 p.m. every June 11th. But by the 5th anniversary of Agent Caroline Vance's disappearance, curiosity had evolved into obsession. What had once been a forgotten case file was now a cultural artifact. True crime podcasts rebuilt the timeline, documentary crews mapped the geography of Hollow Creek, and online sleuths traded rumors about residual light phenomena. Each year as June approached, the story surfaced again like something caught in a repeating tide. Among the hundreds of amateur investigators chasing the legend, one name began to stand out: Maya LaRue, a journalist known for exposing hoaxes and dismantling conspiracies. She wasn't drawn by ghosts. She was drawn by patterns. If the light remembers, she said on camera, then somewhere the evidence is still talking. Maya arrived in Hollow Creek on a cool May evening, armed with notebooks, a digital recorder, and the confidence of someone who didn't believe in curses. The town had changed. The Carter field was fenced off the woods, trimmed back, and yet the air carried that same strange stillness reported by every investigator. Before her, an almost photographic silence, as if sound itself was waiting for a flash. Her first stop was the municipal archives. Boxes labeled Operation Junefire sat untouched for years. Inside, she found copies of the 1995 police report's aerial maps and one sealed envelope marked Restricted Photographic Evidence Do Not Reproduce. She opened it carefully. The envelope contained a contact sheet, miniature negatives from the undeveloped film discovered in Lydia Graves's property. Under magnification, Maya noticed something no one had documented before in the margins of each frame: faint handwritten coordinates. They formed a path. When plotted on a map, the coordinates spiraled outward from Hollow Creek, crossing state lines, ending near Lake Ontario. At the center of the spiral, the date 06/11/95. At the outermost edge, 06/11/25. 30 years, exactly. Maya followed the trail north, documenting every stop for what she planned to call her series The Light Archive. Along the way, she met others who claimed that their cameras had malfunctioned around the anniversary tourists hikers, even a wedding photographer whose entire memory card had turned white at midnight. Overexposure, one expert told her. Sunspots, faulty sensors. But Maya noticed the timestamps. Every failure occurred within the same 60-second window, 11:59 p.m. June 11th. Back in her motel room, she built a wall of photos and notes, her own version of Sarah Miles's evidence board. Each thread converged on one idea. The circle of June never ended, it diffused. Somewhere, someone was still experimenting with light. In late May, she tracked down a former student of Professor Marrow Evan Corbin, now an aging phototechnician in Syracuse. He refused interviews, but when she mentioned the phrase, capture achieved, he froze. I thought we buried that with him, he said. Evan described the last experiment Marrow conducted before the fire, something called frame continuum. The goal was to create a photograph that developed itself continuously, renewing the captured moment every year when the same light conditions returned. He said time was circular, Evan murmured. If you could trap light in the right geometry, the image would keep unfolding. We called it the circle. When Maya asked if it worked, he gave a short, humorless laugh. It worked too well. He handed her a thin envelope. Inside was an undeveloped negative and a note written decades ago. Expose only when the light feels familiar. June 10th arrived heavy with rain. The town's power flickered. Across Hollow Creek, people spoke of static on radio's cameras that refused to focus clocks that jumped forward a minute, then back again. Maya stayed up late in her motel room, waiting for midnight. She'd placed the negative from Evan Corbin on the window ledge, letting the storm's flashes wash over it. At exactly 11:59, lightning struck nearby white light, filling the room. When her vision cleared, the negative had developed itself. The image was faint, but recognizable, the old Carter house before its demolition, perfectly intact lights glowing in every window. And in the upstairs frame, a silhouette stood watching her. She turned toward the real window. Nothing outside, only rain. She developed the negative properly at dawn. The house remained visible, but the figure was gone. On the back, fresh ink bled through the paper ink that hadn't been there hours earlier. The circle closes in 20 years. The math pointed to June 11th, 2025, less than a month away. Word of her discovery spread fast. Networks wanted interviews, academic conferences invited her to speak, but the deeper she went, the stranger it grew. Researchers analyzing the negative found trace compounds of silver halide not manufactured since the late 80s, yet the development chemistry matched modern digital prints. It was as if two eras of photography had fused in one moment. A physicist from Cornell described it as temporal resonance, the same phrase used in Marrow's banned thesis. Another expert quietly told Maya that several of the recovered Polaroids emitted low-frequency radiation not consistent with any known optical process. She began to dream in flashes, streets flooded with white light walls, covered in photographs of her own hands holding a camera. When she woke, she'd find faint streaks of silver dust on her fingers. The documentary crew joined her in early June. They wanted to capture the exact conditions of the 1995 event. Drones, sensors, live feed cameras, all synchronized to record the field where the Carter house once stood. On June 10th, the weather turned eerily similar to that night 30 years ago, humid air, low thunder, a haze that dulled every color. As the sun set, the team prepared. Maya stood at the center of the field with the negative in her pocket and a digital camera, ready. If this is all psychology, she told the lens, then so is faith. At 11:58, everything stilled. Even the insects went silent. The monitors registered a drop in ambient temperature. At 11:59, the first flash came, not lightning, but pure white light blooming from nowhere, flooding the field like a camera aperture opening wide. The crew's equipment overloaded. Screens turned white, microphones hissed, batteries drained. When the light faded, Maya was standing exactly where she'd been, but the negative in her pocket was gone. In its place, a developed photograph. It showed her and the entire crew, frozen mid-flash, captured from above. The timestamp read 06/11/95, 30 years earlier. The footage recovered from backup drives showed static for nearly a full minute before restoring at 12:00 a.m. When it did, the field was empty. The camera array stood intact, untouched. By dawn, rescue teams found the entire crew wandering near the edge of town, disoriented but unharmed. None remembered the last 60 seconds. Only Maya recalled the light. It wasn't blinding, she told investigators later. It was remembering. For weeks after technicians analyzed the photograph she'd brought back, the spectral data contained anomalies that didn't match the camera model or film chemistry. One lab claimed the emulsion contained information layers, microscopic images nested inside one another, each visible only under a specific wavelength. When scientists reconstructed the layers, they revealed something unexpected faces, dozens of them. Emily Carter, Lydia Graves, Sarah Miles, Caroline Vance, all the missing, each face looking straight at the lens. The discovery reignited the national obsession. News anchors called it the photograph that knows time. Skeptics dismissed it as digital manipulation. Universities demanded access. The Bureau refused. But behind closed doors, the investigation continued. The photo was sealed in a lead-lined archive cataloged as Afterlight #1. When technicians returned a week later, the print had changed. The faces had shifted slightly. At the center now was a new one, Maya LaRue. Officially, her disappearance remains unexplained. Unofficially, the footage from that night ends with one final frame, a single white flash followed by a faint inscription etched into the data feed itself, not the film. Capture achieved. The story of the Circle of June would once again fade from the headlines stored in archives and whispered in classrooms. But every year, around the same date, photographers across the Northeast report the same glitch, a frame that whites out for exactly 1 second before recovering. Most dismiss it as coincidence. Others wait for it, cameras poised, hoping to glimpse whatever the light is still trying to remember. Because if Professor Marrow was right, if every photograph carries the ghost of what it once saw, then somewhere inside the endless exposure of time, the circle isn't closed at all. It's still developing. The photograph was supposed to stay still. That was the point of locking it away, to freeze the anomaly, to stop the shifting faces from rearranging themselves in the light. But in the months after its arrival at the Federal Image Analysis Center in Washington, Afterlight #1 began to behave like something alive. At first, the changes were subtle, microscopic shifts, in contrast spectral anomalies that only appeared under polarized lenses. Then came the sound. Low-frequency hums recorded by vibration sensors attached to the archival drawer. The technicians thought it was interference from the building's cooling system until the tone began matching the rhythm of human speech. 5 syllables, repeating. Capture achieved. Dr. Alan Mercer, a senior imaging physicist, was the first to document the phenomenon. In his report, he wrote, "The emulsion layer appears to exhibit active reorganization under minimal light exposure. The pattern resembles synaptic firing." In simpler words, the photograph was learning. Every attempt to scan it caused new interference. The spectral output no longer matched any known photographic process. It fluctuated between analog and digital wavelengths as if oscillating between eras. One scientist described it as time breathing through silver. The Bureau classified the file as Temporal Artifact 1A and sealed the lab. Only a handful of analysts retained clearance. They called their task Project Recall. By winter, even the building itself began reacting. Cameras in the archive corridor sometimes froze on a single frame for exactly 60 seconds before resuming the footage missing that minute entirely. On review, the absent interval showed faint flashes of white light bouncing through the hall reflections with no source. Security logs captured temperature drops, magnetometer spikes, and in one unnerving instance, the faint scent of developer fluid decades after the lab had stopped using it. Dr. Mercer tried to remain logical. It's feedback, he told his team, an echo between image and observer. But privately, he started keeping his notes on paper only. He refused to photograph the evidence board, saying no lens should see this twice. In March, Afterlight #1 changed again. During a routine ultraviolet scan, analysts noticed that the surface texture no longer matched previous measurements. The emulsion had thickened by less than a millimeter, but within that new layer lay a hidden pattern, fine concentric rings radiating outward from the center like ripples in still water. When magnified, the rings resolved into binary code. Decoded, the message read, latitude 43.9367, longitude 75.1409. The coordinates pointed to Hollow Creek, New York. News leaked within days, first a forum post, then a podcast. Government photograph points back to Cold Case Town. By April, journalists were camping outside the archives. The Bureau tried to contain it. The official statement called the coordinates artifacts of scanning noise. But internally, an investigative unit was dispatched to Hollow Creek once again. Dr. Mercer joined them reluctantly. If the photo wants to go home, he told the director, then maybe the only way to stop it is to follow. The field looked ordinary under spring sunlight, grass, whined, nothing more. Yet radiation detectors picked up faint bursts of energy, matching the same frequency the photograph emitted in the lab. At sunset, the air shimmered visible even without instruments. Not a flash, not lightning, just a momentary brightening as if the world had inhaled light. Then everything settled. When the team returned to Washington after light, #1 was blank. Every trace of image and ink erased. Only the faint silver sheen remained. The lab logged it as emulsion burnout. But that night, surveillance cameras caught the drawer glowing for exactly 60 seconds. When morning came, the image had returned clearer than before. And there was something new. A faint figure standing behind the original faces. Dr. Mercer. He denied taking any photograph, denied manipulating the negative. Yet his likeness was perfect right down to the pen in his breast pocket. Colleagues began to avoid the archive. They said the lights flickered whenever he entered, that reflections lagged a second behind his movements. On May 12th, he requested removal from the project. Denied. 3 days later, he stopped signing his reports. Instead, his notes appeared typed in a font identical to the text embedded within the photograph. The last line he wrote, "The frame remembers who looks back." By June, panic spread quietly through the division. Technicians rotated shifts to limit exposure. No one stayed past midnight, yet every morning the cameras recorded brief intervals of lost footage, always the same 11:59 p.m. to 12:00 a.m. Exactly 1 minute erased. Exactly 1 minute remembered by something else. When the Bureau tried to move Afterlight #1 to a sealed underground vault, the transfer vehicle's black box recorder captured a burst of static halfway through the trip, duration 60 seconds. When the team opened the case at arrival, a second photograph lay beside the original. Identical composition, new date stamp, 06/11/25, the coming June. Meetings filled with speculation. Was it a prediction? A threat, a loop? The director ordered both prints contained separately, believing distance might break the pattern. It didn't. Every night, at the same minute, both photographs brightened, simultaneously pulsing in unison, like twin heartbeats. A young analyst compared the light curves and found them inverse, each image bright where the other was dark. Combined digitally, they revealed something that made everyone fall silent. A full panoramic scene of the Hollow Creek field under daylight that hadn't happened yet. The sky streaked with the color of sunrise, and in the center of the frame stood a line of people facing the horizon. 17 figures. When magnified, each had blurred facial features except one, Maya LaRue. The revelation tore through the Bureau. If the date stamp was right, the image showed the future, June 11th, 2025, less than a month away. The department debated destroying both photographs. The physicists warned against it. Energy doesn't vanish, one said. It migrates. In the end, they chose containment. But curiosity is a kind of contagion. A week later, one of the analysts broke protocol and took a digital snapshot of Afterlight #1 for comparison. The moment the flash fired, every monitor in the lab went white. When systems rebooted the analyst's snapshot, file contained not the artifact, but an image of the lab itself, empty except for the camera lying on the floor. The metadata timestamp, 06/11/25:11:59 p.m. Across the country, devices began to fail in the same pattern. News photographers reported frames lost to pure white light. Surveillance footage skipped precisely 60 seconds. Weather satellites registered brief bursts of unexplained luminescence centered over New York State. The phenomenon was no longer local. The circle had expanded. Within the Bureau, silence replaced panic. Public statements spoke only of routine data corruption. Internally, memos circulated with a single instruction. No photographic equipment to operate within 1 mile of the artifact on June 11th. But rules are only strong until curiosity returns. Dr. Mercer, now withdrawn, spent his final weeks building something in the lab, an analog camera rigged with twin apertures designed to capture light simultaneously from 2 points in space. He called it a closing mechanism. On June 10th, he left a message for the director. If the circle opens again, maybe a second exposure will seal it. He set the timer for 11:59 p.m., positioned the rig facing the artifact, and left the room. At midnight, the entire facility went dark. When power returned, the rig had fired. The plates inside contained 2 exposures merged into one dense, overbright, unreadable. The original Afterlight #1 remained in its drawer unchanged. But now there was a third print resting beside it. A panorama of the field. Dawn light rising 17 figures still facing east. All their faces clear. Dr. Mercer among them. And beneath the image, the familiar inscription in blue ink, "Capture achieved." Officially, Project Recall was terminated that morning. The facility was sealed staff, reassigned, the photographs relocated to an undisclosed site. Unofficially, the scientists who had worked on the project reported the same side effect flashes of white behind closed eyes, dreams filled with soft clicking sounds. Some claimed their reflections sometimes delayed a heartbeat behind them. The Bureau ignored it. Files were marked archived, no further inquiry. But late that summer, a maintenance worker at a federal records warehouse noticed something strange while replacing fluorescent bulbs. On the concrete wall near the security camera's reflection, faint outlines shimmered like undeveloped negatives waiting for light. He took a photo on his phone. The image came out blank. Yet, when viewed under glare, words glimmered faintly across the screen. Light remembers. June returns. They started calling it the Afterlight event. At first, it was rumor photographers losing a single frame to white satellites flashing out for exactly 1-minute mirrors in subway stations, brightening as if catching an invisible sunrise. But by mid-June, the pattern was too perfect, too synchronized to be dismissed as coincidence. It always happened at 11:59 p.m. local time everywhere, 1 minute stolen, 1 frame erased. Governments labeled it an optical anomaly. News anchors said solar interference. But inside laboratories from Washington to Tokyo scientists whispered a different phrase, temporal exposure. The phenomenon didn't discriminate. Phone cameras, traffic sensors, even security footage all recorded the same effect, a pulse of white like a global flashbulb. In Paris, museum conservators reported that a 19th century daguerreotype briefly re-exposed itself, revealing details unseen since its creation. In Mumbai, a commuter's selfie captured a background that didn't exist the same street, but empty as if photographed a century earlier. Every image, no matter where it came from, carried the same digital watermark hidden in its metadata Afterlight 01. Governments formed a joint inquiry, the Global Photonic Task Force. Among them was Dr. Naomi Kaur, a quantum light researcher from Geneva. She described the event not as radiation, but as a recursion of observation. Her theory was simple, terrifying. The world had taken a photograph of itself. When light bounced back into every lens at the same instant, she said it created a single frame, one enormous exposure connecting every reflective surface on Earth. And somewhere in that exposure, the original Afterlight image was buried like a negative at the heart of a camera. By July, faint echoes of that minute began to resurface. Hard drives corrupted on the same sectors. Digital clocks stalled for 60 seconds, then resumed 1 minute ahead. Some people reported seeing brief overlays, street corners brightening with ghosted figures, faces superimposed where no one stood. Psychologists called it Afterlight syndrome, memory drift, perceptual lag, déjà vu, repeating in loops of white and silence. A linguist noticed a new word appearing in random data packets transmitted during that missing minute. An AI-generated tag used by global content filters, capture achieved. No one had programmed it. Meanwhile, the original photographs Afterlight hash, 1-2-3, remained sealed in an underground vault. No one had opened them since the June pulse. But the sensors monitoring their cases showed changes in heat and magnetism that corresponded exactly to the global flashes. When the task force compared timestamps, they realized the impossible. The artifacts weren't reacting to the event. They were leading it by precisely 1 minute. Each pulse began inside the vault, then the world followed. Dr. Kaur proposed an experiment: isolate one of the prints in a light-proof chamber, then record any spontaneous emission. The chamber's interior was monitored by instruments only. No cameras, no glass. At 11:58 p.m., the sensors picked up nothing unusual. At 11:59, every meter spiked. The air itself released photons light with no source, as if the room had remembered being bright. The next day, when the print was examined under safe light, new text had appeared across its surface. No handwriting, no ink, just faint silver grain forming words. We are all in the frame. The message leaked. Social networks ignited with interpretations, prophecy, hoax, quantum art project. Conspiracy channels broadcast grainy reenactments of the first Hollow Creek investigation. But away from the noise, a small circle of researchers began to think the unthinkable. If the afterlight was an image of the world, then every new flash wasn't memory, it was update. Reality itself re-exposed. In late August, observatories noticed another anomaly, the planet's albedo. The amount of sunlight it reflected had risen by a fraction of a percent, too small to notice, yet unmistakable. The Earth was becoming slightly more reflective. Satellite imagery showed subtle shifts. Coastlines gleaming differently, clouds forming geometric spirals faintly reminiscent of the concentric patterns found in Afterlight #1. A commentator said it best during a live broadcast, it's as if the planet is developing film. Amid the scientific chaos, one voice from the past resurfaced, Daniel Carter, now in hiding since the original cold case closure. A letter appeared in a journalist's inbox, postmarked from nowhere, written on photographic paper. You can't stop it. The light doesn't just remember, it corrects. Every time we look, it looks back sharper. At the bottom of the page, a tiny image bled through an inverted negative of a woman standing in sunlight, Sarah Miles. Governments tightened control on imagery. Public agencies were ordered to reduce camera use during the Afterlight minute. Airlines grounded flights to avoid satellite interference. Yet the phenomenon adapted. People began reporting spontaneous photographs appearing on screens, images of moments that hadn't yet happened, but soon would a commuter stepping off a train, a cup tipping over a handshake, always within minutes of the actual event. Prediction through reflection. Researchers named the new data burst pre-exposure. No one understood it, but the faces caught in those glimpses often looked straight into the lens, as though aware they were being recorded. In September, a second synchronization occurred. For exactly 60 seconds, all global imaging networks went white again. When they returned, the same message appeared across systems worldwide: cell phones, advertising panels, even traffic lights blinking in Morse. Capture achieved, next frame in 1 year. And then silence. The world adjusted. Life continued beneath the ticking countdown no one could escape. Some treated it like an anniversary. Others refused to take photos at all. No more lenses, one protest sign read, no more mirrors. Cultural movements grew around the fear of being recorded by the light itself. Artists painted over windows, replaced selfies with hand-drawn portraits. Yet curiosity never died. Every new technology tried to peer deeper into the afterlight minute: quantum sensors, particle detectors, even neural recorders mapping visual memory. All returned the same blank interval. The universe refused to remember what happened at 11:59, but it never forgot that it had. By winter, Dr. Kaur and her team were running one last simulation, a reconstruction of all known afterlight data compressed into a single composite image. When processed, the result appeared first as noise, then gradually formed a shape the planet viewed from orbit, glowing faintly wrapped in an aura of refracted light. At the center of that glow, faint outlines resolved into thousands of micro-portraits, faces layered like grains of film. Every person ever caught by a lens, including those long vanished, including those never photographed at all. The file corrupted before it could be saved. All that remained on the monitor were 4 words self-generated by the system's checksum log: frame, complete standby. No one knows if the next pulse will come. Some scientists claim the phenomenon has stabilized. Others believe it's only waiting for the right alignment, the exact angle of light that began it all in 1995 in a quiet New York town that no longer exists. In Hollow Creek's empty field, grass sways where the Carter house once stood. Locals say the soil flashes faintly every June just for a heartbeat, as if the earth itself remembers being seen. And somewhere sealed in a vault, the photographs rest unchanged, unaging. If you shine a light across their surfaces now, the grain glitters faintly, like dust caught in sunlight. Some technicians swear the shimmer forms a sentence. They say it reads, "The world has developed." They called the coming year the countdown to the final frame. Every calendar, every clock, every satellite timer now carried a second clock below the date. Next Afterlight event, the 11th of June, 2026, 11:59 p.m. Governments treated it like an eclipse, scheduling curfews and power blackouts. Cities dimmed their skylines to reduce optical interference. Churches called it prophecy. Physicists called it exposure fatigue. For ordinary people, it was something stranger, a shared anticipation that stretched through the days like static before lightning. The last global flash had left no scars, only questions. But this time, the world expected consequence. At the European Photon Observatory in Geneva, Dr. Naomi Kaur assembled a coalition of scientists, linguists, and archivists to create the Light Ledger, a record of everything known about the phenomenon. Each entry was written on physical paper and stored offline. If the next frame rewrites the data, she told the press, we need something that cannot be edited by light. Her team noticed something extraordinary. The afterlight pulses followed the same mathematical rhythm as exposure compensation on an analog camera, each event doubling in luminous intensity. If that curve continued, the next flash would reach the brightness of full daylight, visible from space. What happens when the camera overexposes? A journalist asked. Kaur answered softly. The image goes white. Meanwhile, artists began preparing in their own way. A movement calling itself the Reflectors painted entire buildings in matte black to absorb light. Another. The framekeepers believed humanity was meant to complete the photograph. They organized vigils, facing east at midnight, holding mirrors toward the sky. News feeds filled with the same phrase written in hundreds of languages, be still when it happens. Governments argued about protocol. Should everyone look away or watch? Should cameras be banned or synchronized? The United Nations issued a cautious statement. Observation is voluntary, participation inevitable. Behind closed doors, the Global Photonic Task Force debated whether to open the sealed vault containing the 3 original Afterlight prints. Some claimed the artifacts were the source. Others believed they were anchors keeping the phenomenon stable. In late May, the decision came, do not interfere. But curiosity has its own gravity. Inside the vault, a skeleton crew monitored the artifacts around the clock. Readouts showed rising electromagnetic pulses matching the planetary frequency of reflected light. At precisely the same moment, each night 11:59, the temperature dropped 1 degree and faint traces of ozone appeared as though a miniature atmosphere formed around the prints. Technician logs captured static phrases in the interference. Stand by for capture. Frame ready. Dr. Kaur visited the facility the week before the expected event. She requested 1 minute alone with the photographs. The guards hesitated, then granted it. She placed her palm against the sealed glass and whispered, "If the world is becoming a picture, let it remember kindness." Elsewhere, the media built countdown studios. Anchors rehearsed coverage for a minute they wouldn't be able to record. Streaming platforms prepared blackout screens titled The White Minute Live. In New York, drones hovered above an empty field where Hollow Creek once stood. It had become a memorial now, a circle of mirrors facing outward engraved with every name connected to the case. Emily Carter, Lydia Graves, Sarah Miles, Caroline Vance, Maya LaRue. At the center stood a single Polaroid camera sealed behind glass. Tourists left offerings, flowers, photographs, handwritten notes that read, "Remember us in the light." June 10th arrived with unnatural clarity. The sky across continents shimmered silver at dusk, as if the world itself were already reflecting. Digital sensors worldwide registered a faint hum identical to the vibration recorded in the first afterlight photograph. Scientists called it pre-flash resonance. Poets called it the heartbeat of light. On June 11th, the planet held its breath. At 11 p.m., global networks synchronized atomic clocks to the millisecond. Power grids lowered output. Every remaining camera, telescope, and satellite pointed toward the Earth instead of away, ready to record nothing. At 11:58, a subtle glow rose from every reflective surface, windows, rivers, even human eyes. Instruments recorded a steady climb in luminance, not from the sun, but from the air itself. Dr. Kaur stood in the Geneva Observatory control room, watching monitors fade slowly to white. "It's starting," someone whispered. At 11:59 p.m., every screen, every mirror, every drop of water filled with a single, colorless brilliance. Then silence. When the minute ended, clocks rolled to midnight. Power returned automatically. The world appeared unchanged, no shockwave, no damage, just a lingering softness, as if everything had been lightly retouched. But data told another story. All digital storage across the planet contained a new folder identical in name and size after Light Final. Each file held a single image. Every location showed the same scene, its own environment bathed in perfect daylight, empty of people. Cities without motion, fields without wind, stillness, flawless, eternal. No one had seen the photos being created, yet every device held one. Analysis revealed something else. Beneath the visible layer of each image was metadata written in human language, repeating across millions of systems. Frame complete, exposure secured, archive open. The world debated what it meant. Scientists proposed that the flash had frozen a universal frame, a backup of reality. Philosophers said it proved consciousness and light were inseparable. A few simply looked around and said everything feels cleaner. Colors seemed sharper echoes, slightly longer. Some swore the stars looked closer. In Hollow Creek, dawn broke with an unfamiliar warmth. The mirrors at the memorial were no longer reflective. Each had turned translucent, showing faint moving shadows behind the glass like negatives waiting to develop. Tourists reported hearing the soft click of a shutter carried on the wind. At the center display, the sealed Polaroid camera had ejected a new photo, despite having no film pack inside. Security footage, one of the few recordings that survived the flash, showed the moment clearly. The camera vibrated. Light leaked from the lens, and a single print slid out. The image showed the field under morning sun, but empty of mirrors, empty of cameras. Only one figure stood there facing east. Sarah Miles? At the bottom, the familiar blue ink shimmered once more. The light remembers.